The dog was there when procurement liaison Ovesi arrived on his first morning, and it was there when he left on his last. That was 14 months. He kept count because he kept records. Record-keeping was what a procurement liaison did, and Ovesi was thorough in a way his superiors had once called commendable, and his peers now called unnerving. He had a log of every supply manifest that had passed through the Kerev Junction transit hub, every variance report, every late delivery, every amended invoice. He had not intended to keep a log of the dog, but by the end of the third week the dog had become, without anyone deciding it, part of the record. The animal sat on the platform at Gate 7. Not near Gate 7, not somewhere in the general vicinity. At Gate 7, specifically at the top of the passenger ramp where the disembarkation walkway met the main concourse. He sat in the same position each morning, slightly left of center on the ramp, haunches square, front paws aligned, head up. He was a Labrador, Ovesi had eventually learned, which was a category of earth dog bred for something involving water retrieval, and which now, in the practical sense, appeared to be bred for waiting. Ovesi had asked one of the human transit workers about him on day 4, when it became apparent the animal was not a one-time occurrence. The worker, a compact young woman named Harrow who managed the Gate 7 berth assignments, had given him the kind of look humans gave when they were deciding how much to say. Then she'd said, "His name is Ruddy. His person was Cadet First Class Dina Kasserith. She shipped out on the Vethran convoy 11 months before you got here. Convoy had a delay notification on file. Ruddy's been waiting." Ovesi had processed that. Where is the cadet now? Harrow had looked back at her manifest screen. Still on delay notification, she'd said, with a flatness that Ovesi had learned over time, meant the human had more to say and had decided not to say it yet. He had filed the exchange under personal observations and not thought about it again for approximately 8 days, at which point he passed Gate 7 on his way to a budget reconciliation meeting and noticed that Ruddy had acquired a water dish. It was a wide ceramic bowl, the color of old clay, positioned 3 careful paces to the left of where Ruddy sat so it did not interfere with the ramp. Someone had placed it precisely. Someone checked it. Ovesi watched from the concourse railing for 6 minutes and saw Harrow come by during what was clearly not her Gate 7 shift, refill the bowl from a flask she carried in her cargo pocket, scratch Ruddy once behind the ear, and leave without slowing down. Ruddy did not follow her. He watched her go, then looked back at the ramp. Ovesi wrote it down. The disembarkation flow at Kerev Junction ran on a 16-hour cycle, arrivals at 04, 08, 1200 and again at 1800. At each arrival window the ramp pressurized, the hatch seal broke, and passengers filed down in the order transit protocol required. Ovesi had observed enough arrivals from the mezzanine level to know the pattern. The passengers came off looking at their tablets or their luggage or the junction directory boards. They did not look at the dog at first, because they did not expect a dog to be there, and then they looked at the dog, and then most of them looked away again or made small sounds to each other. The ones who had dogs at home were identifiable because they stopped. Not everyone who stopped bent down, but most did, and Ruddy accepted these gestures with the equanimity of an entity who had already made his central calculation and found it satisfactory. He accepted the pats and the good boy murmurs and the crouching examinations without leaning into them, without following the persons who offered them when they stood and walked on. He took what was offered. He returned to the ramp. By day 31 Ovesi had, without consciously planning it, begun timing his morning walk through the concourse to pass Gate 7 at the 08 arrival window. He told himself it was incidental. His office suite was in the East Junction, the commissary was in the North Block, and Gate 7 was a reasonable midpoint. The route made practical sense. He maintained this position in his private reasoning for approximately 11 more days before he acknowledged that he was also taking the same route at the 1200 window, and on days when his schedule permitted, at 1800 as well. He did not adjust the log entry. He let the practical explanation stand without examining it. In the 7th week, a Vethran freight inspector named Kerev arrived for a 3-day audit of bonded cargo. Kerev was senior and had opinions, which he shared freely on the 2nd day when he accompanied Ovesi through the concourse and they passed Gate 7 at the 08 window. The ramp had just cycled. Passengers were filing down. Ruddy was in his position. "That animal," Kerev said, "should not be on an active ramp approach. It is a liability." Ovesi said nothing. "There are containment protocols," Kerev continued. "Junction Health and Safety Code 11-4. I'd check it if I were the on-duty coordinator." Ovesi had already checked it. He had checked it in week 2 when a different inspector had raised a similar observation. Code 11-4 covered unrestrained biological units in active transit corridors. The dog was neither unrestrained nor in an active transit corridor. He was seated at the ramp approach, which was a designated waiting area, and he had a collar with an active beacon and a transit hub visitor permit issued under the human handler provision, which Harrow had apparently filed and renewed 3 times in 11 months. "The permit is current," Ovesi said. Kerev made a sound indicating that the permit's currency was not the point. The 08 arrival came off the ramp in the usual order. A Velhari family with 2 children, a pair of human cargo brokers, tablets already open, several Gathrex students in academy colors, a supply officer Ovesi recognized from the bonded warehouse, and then the end of the passenger flow, the stragglers, the ones who had been in the rear compartments, and then the ramp began its post-arrival pressurization cycle, which meant no more passengers were coming. Ruddy watched the last passenger clear the ramp. He watched the hatch seal engage. Then he settled, not lying down, not changing his seated position, just a fractional release of tension through the shoulders, the kind of adjustment a person made when mentally noting that something had not happened yet but might happen at 1200. Kerev had gone quiet. "He does that every arrival window," Ovesi said. It was not something he had planned to say, and once said he did not explain further. Kerev finished his audit on day 3 and departed. He did not raise code 11-4 in his written report. The months accumulated. Ovesi had not expected to be at Kerev Junction this long. His original posting was 9 months, extended twice for reasons that were fiscal rather than personal. He had also not expected to know the name of a dog, the capacity of a ceramic water dish, or the precise number of arrivals at Gate 7 during which Ruddy had waited and the cadet had not appeared. He knew these things anyway. The count was 314. He knew this because he had, somewhere in the 4th month, begun logging the arrival windows the same way he logged everything else. Date, time, arrival number, passengers disembarked, Cadet First Class Dina Kasserith status, not present. He had not told anyone he was doing this. By the 11th month, Ruddy was a fact of the junction the way the directory boards and the cargo scale and the smell of recycled coolant were facts of the junction. The commissary staff left water out for him during the gap windows. 2 of the overnight security personnel had begun walking him through the outer concourse during the long hours between the 1800 and 04 arrivals, not because anyone had formally arranged it, but because someone had mentioned it to someone else, and the arrangement had taken hold. Kerev Junction's unofficial biological census, which Ovesi had access to through a systems audit he'd run in month 6, listed Ruddy under temporary visitor units, Gate 7. Someone had typed the location with specificity. Someone was keeping that record accurate. Ovesi did not edit it. In the 9th month, the delay notification on the Vethran convoy was revised. Ovesi received the updated status through the General Junction Communications Relay, because procurement liaisons received General Communications Relay updates, and this was now in the General Communications Relay. He read it at his desk with the careful attention he gave every document. The Vethran convoy had completed its deployment. Personnel were in transit home on a staggered schedule. Estimated arrival windows for the Kerev Junction return leg, beginning in 67 days. Ovesi sat with that for some time. Then he went to the concourse. Harrow was at Gate 7, not at her station but near Ruddy, who was in his position for the 1800 window. She had her cargo flask. She was not refilling the water dish. She was just standing there, which was also something she did, Ovesi had noted, when the day was long and the junction felt large. "The convoy," Ovesi said. "I know," Harrow said. "I sent her a message. She'll see it when she's in relay range." "I know." They stood there for a moment. Ruddy did not look at them. He was looking at the ramp. "I've been logging the arrivals," Ovesi said, "the ones he's waited through." Harrow looked at him then, the same look from day 4, the look where she was deciding how much to say. This time she said more. "How many?" 314 windows, since I arrived. She'd been gone 11 months before that. So call it whatever number you get when you count arrival windows across 23 months of 4 daily. Harrow looked back at the ramp. She did not calculate it aloud. "Why?" she asked. "I'm not entirely sure," Ovesi said, which was as honest as he was capable of being on the subject. In those 67 days, he noted 2 things that he added to the record. The first was that Ruddy did not change his routine. Whatever the updated convoy status meant in terms of calendar and transit schedules, the dog had no access to the communications relay. He had no way to know anything had shifted. He sat at the ramp at 04 and 1200 and 1800, settled when the hatch sealed, and was back in position when it opened again. Unchanged. The second thing Ovesi noted was that other people began arriving at Gate 7 during the arrival windows who had no transit-related reason to be there. The commissary staff, the overnight security personnel, a Gathrak academic who had been waiting on a connecting vessel for 6 weeks and had apparently made the 08 window part of his morning routine. Harrow, who had always come but now came for all 4 windows and brought a second flask. None of them organized it. None of them said anything about it. They positioned themselves along the concourse railing and watched the ramp, the same way Ovesi had been doing for the better part of a year, and Ruddy remained in his position at the top of the walkway and gave them nothing in particular to watch. The junction had organized itself around a dog who was waiting. Ovesi noted that too. He did not have a procurement category for it. 67 days later, Cadet First Class Dina Kasarith came down the Gate 7 ramp at the 1800 arrival window. Ovesi was there because his schedule permitted it. He had not told himself any other reason. She was young, early 20s, with the look of someone who had been somewhere difficult for a long time and was still recalibrating to a place that had corridors and lights and ambient noise that was not operational. She was carrying a pack that was clearly too heavy, walking the way soldiers walked when they were tired but would not say so. She did not see Ruddy at first. She was looking at the concourse directory board, getting her bearings the way new arrivals did. Ruddy saw her. He stood up. He had been sitting for the full 40 minutes of the arrival window, motionless in the way that had become familiar to every person who transited Gate 7. And now he was standing, and the change was immediate enough that Ovesi saw 3 passing travelers stop without knowing why they'd stopped. Dina Kasarith looked down. Ovesi had logged 314 arrival windows without an event. He logged this one too, though the entry he wrote that evening was shorter than most and contained fewer figures than was his habit. Ruddy crossed the ramp in 4 strides. He did not knock her down. He was a large animal and she was tired, and it was the kind of restraint you only got from a creature that understood exactly how much it weighed and chose not to use it all at once. He put his head against her sternum and she got both arms around him, and they stayed that way for a while, and the junction kept moving around them because junctions did not stop. But the three travelers who had paused were still pausing, and Harrow had put her flask in her pocket, and the commissary staff were at the railing, and Ovesey stood at the mezzanine with his log tablet in his hand and did not write anything for a long time. That was the evening he understood, approximately, why he had kept the count. It was not about procurement. It was not about the permit, or Code 11-4, or the efficiency of having an unaffiliated biological unit occupying a ramp approach. It was that the dog had known something Ovesey had not been entirely sure he believed, that the window would come, that the ramp would cycle, that the person who was supposed to appear would appear, and had simply kept the record of that belief in the only way available to him, which was to be there, positioned correctly, every time the hatch seal broke. Ovesey filed his final report the next morning. He was being reassigned to the central hub at Davin Station, which was a reasonable progression and which he had been told to expect. He passed Gate 7 on his way out. Gate 7 was empty. The ceramic water dish was gone. He added one final line to his personal log, marked it non-procurement, and closed the file.